Well, welcome to our third edition of Local Gov Stories, the official podcast for ILCMA. I'm Jim Moran here with my co-host, Melanie Santostefano. Melanie,
Hello.
it's awesome to see you
Awesome
and
to see
great
you.
to be here. I loved our time together. And these podcasts for me, and I hope for our listeners as well, have really become a great way to hear what's going on in other parts around the entire state of Illinois and local government. We've talked to some awesome people, and today is no exception.
No, not at all. Actually, we will hear in a little bit from Danny Langloss. I had the honor of interviewing Danny, who I know through conferences and being in the local government world. We're not only going to hear about how he came into being an administrator as a former police chief, which is an interesting story. We're going to hear about a little bit about his experiences with the embezzlement, which was actually in the city of Dixon, as many of you might know, was the largest embezzlement in state history. It was a really big deal, and Danny was kind of right in the middle as police chief. So interesting story we'll hear about in addition to his evolution into administration. A really great interview. I'm looking forward to everyone hearing it.
Wow,
See?
there are several things there I'm really excited to hear about, especially, well, not even including police chief going to being police chief to the administrator, which is, I'm seeing a lot more of that, including in
Yeah.
the community I work in. So it's exciting. I'm excited to hear your talk. Also, I had a chance to talk to an up and comer, and I don't even know if that's the correct term because she's an
He's already
assistant.
here.
Yeah, she's up in here, and
Up in
she's
here.
going to grow into bigger things.
Yes.
Hannah Lipman, she's the assistant manager for Tinley Park. She's awesome. We had a great interview, a great talk about her career. And one of the things I walked away from our interview just excited about what I do for a living, and it's because her excitement for what she does is very contagious. So I'm
Mhm.
excited to have that a little bit later on.
Hannah is very sharp. I've met her several times and just really enjoy her. She's really, I'm not going to say young because she's very mature, but she is younger than the average assistant, and super sharp, and also comes from a family of local government, which is interesting, how people learn about the profession. So with her, it was kind of right around her growing up. So it's an interesting way to kind of segue into that. Her father and brother are both law enforcement, police. So yeah, I'm so excited to see that interview too, and so will everybody else once you see it. It's really great.
Well, and one of the cool things we talked about is she started off as an intern in Tinley Park. And right after I talked to her, I ran into the guy I was an intern for in the village of Libertyville. Kevin Bowens was our administrator when I was in college. And that
Hmm.
kind of started me down this path. And it was cool to run into him. I haven't seen him in years. And it was right after I talked to Hannah. So it was a great opportunity to relive the importance of internships. So we'll get into that a
Yeah.
little bit later too. But
Yeah. And
first,
also just like mentors, right? Like people who just kind of show you the way and actually either put you in one direction or maybe they put you in quite another that you didn't expect. But, I think it's in general, it's really important for all of us to try to mentor where we can.
well,
For us, we do internships every single year, and trying to work with these young people who are thinking about marketing or public relations. It's really exciting to see just kind of them coming in with a fresh perspective. And oftentimes I learn some things from them. So it's great to have people in your life to help guide you.
Well, Melanie, we have some events coming up in the state of Illinois. I know our
We do.
ILCMA local gov story listeners are going to want to hear about.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I'm trying to pull up this document here. So we have the April ILCMA Professional Development Event and Metro Lunch, and there are two sessions at this event. It's on Wednesday, April 10th. The first is lead service lines, regulations, policy, and outreach. And the second, during the same event, is utility municipal partnership opportunities, EV and beyond. So that can be found at the ilcma.org website. Just click on events. And a second one coming up May 10th is the Metro Manager Golf Outing. So exciting that golf is coming. You know what that means? We're here at spring and the weather's starting to change, even though today it's super cold. But the nice weather's coming, and that means golf is coming, which is so exciting. So again, if you are interested in checking out either one of these, just go to ilcma.org/events.
And as long as you've got your calendar out, I want to remind everybody, our friends at NIU, the MPA program this year is celebrating its 60th anniversary. I know we have a lot of NIU alumni. In about a year, I'll be one of them. So they've got their 60th anniversary dinner coming up at the Two Brothers Roundhouse in Aurora. That's on Thursday, April 4th. You can find more information online through NIU with that. And also our friends at IAMA, April 19th, are having their 27th annual IAMA conference. And Melanie, I believe you'll be one of the keynotes or the presenters at the conference as well. So
I am. I'm really excited to be there because that is just such a brimming group of professionals that will move into leadership someday, or if they would like to, but just younger professionals who are just headed for great things. And I've met so many of them, including Hannah and others. And it's comforting to see these bright minds that are there that will obviously be leading the communities of tomorrow. So I'm really excited to be there.
Excellent. April 19th, you can find out more information if you Google IAMA off the IAMA website. And also, I believe there's a link off the ILCMA website.
Great. Well, shall we get into Mr. Danny
Yes.
Langloss in our interview? All right, let's take it away. Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie Santostefano with the ILCMA Local Gov Stories podcast. And today I'm so excited to introduce you to Danny Langloss. For those of you that don't know him, he is the city manager of the city of Dixon. Danny, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Melanie. I'm excited to be here.
Totally. So we're going to hear a few things. Danny's going to tell us a little bit about Dixon for those of you that don't know that town. And he's also going to talk about how he entered the local government profession and his transgression and evolution within local government, because he has a very interesting story. So first, do tell us about Dixon. I don't know too much about it.
So Dixon is a vibrant, thriving rural community located on 88. We're 90 miles due west of Chicago. We're about 60 miles east of the Quad Cities, just south of Rockford. We're located right on the Rock River. And we've got a downtown that's really our anchor. When you think about the Midwest and friendly and everybody knows their neighbor and just this good feel and vibe, that's Dixon.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of fun to see Dixon evolve since I first got here.
So you'll walk into the coffee shop and I was like, "Hey, Danny."
Yeah, you walk into the coffee shop, it's like going into Cheers, right? Like Norm, like people know each other.
I love that.
People are willing to help when you pass people at a stop sign people like look and wave and smile, and
that's nice.
Just such a great community. But we're at a special time right now because we have so many great people in different key positions. And so we're just trying to capitalize on that as much as possible.
And led by you, you're the fearless leader. So tell us a little bit. So you started in local government, not in administration. So tell us about how it all came about. How did you enter into the profession?
So ever since I was 8 or 9 years old, all I ever wanted to be was a police officer. And so I went to college, got a bachelor's degree in law enforcement at Western. And with law enforcement, you just kind of got to test around. When I was testing, there's hundreds of people testing. Now we struggle in police and fire, actually. Mm-hmm. And so my wife was from Sterling, Illinois. So I tested in Peoria, which is where I was from. I grew up in Peoria Heights. Mm-hmm. I tested in the Sterling area. I tested in Dixon, which they're close. And I got hired in Dixon right away at 21 years old and went to the academy. So that's how I came in to local government. And honestly, I didn't realize that being a police officer was government, right? Like I didn't realize we were.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that.
No, it's just I want to be a police officer. I want to help people. I just had been drawn to the profession. So that's how I came into local government.
Got it. Yeah, you're right about that. A lot of people that I know that don't work in the government space at all think that a fire department is kind of a freestanding organization, or police as well. So yeah. So how long were you with the department, and what roles did you serve in?
So I was with the department for 21 years. We had it was interesting. I came in at a really good time. And I came in, obviously starting patrol. And then I got a huge break about 3 years in. An opening came up because of an injury on the flag football field. Luckily, the guy was okay. And I got tapped on the shoulder to go to investigations. Oh. And when I did, it went really well and kind of began to accelerate my career. At 5 years, I became sergeant. At the 6-year mark, I became the investigation sergeant. And then in 2008, the police chief decided he was going to step away and retire. I'd been a big part of helping shift with him from traditional arrest to community policing, actually trying to dig in and solve some of the issues we were facing to make a difference in mental health and addiction. And so at 33 years old, I competed for the position of police chief and I was selected. And then I served as police chief for 10 years before I end up transitioning to city manager.
Wow. So that was what? Now you started when you were 21, so 12 years, and then all of a sudden you become police chief. How did that feel? Before we move on to city administration, that's got to be a great feeling to kind of grow within an organization and actually move up to the top role.
You know, it is. It was never my goal, but you know, we can never underestimate the impacts that we have on other people. Believing in people, seeing more in people than they see in themselves. You know, I had hoped to be able to, you know, maybe become lieutenant one day. So it's sergeant and then lieutenant and then chief. And, you know, a good friend of mine, an attorney, Lorinda Lampkin, was talking to me. I don't know. I was probably 30 at the time. She says, you know, what are your goals? What do you hope to accomplish? And it's the first time somebody had asked me that and talked about this lieutenant thing. She's like, why are you aiming so low, Danny? Why, you know, your skill set. And she talked about all these different things that she saw and respected in me. And then one day when the chief was looking at retiring, he called me in and he talked to me and he said, I could see you in this position. I don't make the decision, but all the things that you have done, I think you're the person to take us to that next level. And I was like, holy cow. And so next thing you know, as this goes through, I started getting, going for my master's degree. Cause I'm like, okay, I should have the education to go along with this. And so I ended up getting my master's degree. I finished it actually after I became chief and then competed for the process. They liked the vision and what I brought and some of the things that we'd done. And next thing you know, there I was 33 years old going, holy cow, I can't believe that this actually happened.
I'm in charge of this department now. And that's young, right? That's a little young for kind of a normal police chief, right?
It is young, you know. I'm so passionate. For me, becoming the police chief though was about a new beginning. That position opened doors to be able to create impact in areas that I wanted to create impact is in crimes against children, especially in the area of child sexual abuse, which was an area I became very specialized in, people suffering from addiction and mental illness. And so I really saw the position of police chief as a position that would help me open doors to make a greater impact in those areas. Not that it wasn't an incredible impact, investigating cases, helping connect people to services and helping them get their lives turned around, but from a different capacity.
Yeah.
And you know, we created the second program in the country that put heroin addicts to treatment instead of jail. And we helped 150 different communities across the Midwest do the same. We created a program, it's called the Crisis Prevention Team, that's very front edge as it relates to helping people with mental illness. We've created the First Responder Resiliency Program, which is one of the most progressive in the country on how we take care of our officers and protect them from PTSD, how we mitigate some of those things and keep them healthy. And so it's really about, and I think that is the case in city management. It isn't about being in charge. It's about, hey, what difference and impact can we make out of these positions?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you know, when you describe it that way, and I think, you know, I know we're going to talk about your administration work now soon, but going back to your policing and being chief, and that's where you started getting your leadership to become leader of the city of Dixon, but meaningful work, really impacting communities in very important ways. And I always do think that police are kind of see the worst of the worst. You know, they kind of have, when people are in that really down low situation, there's a lot of that. So it's a really commendable profession, just, you know, being in law enforcement. So yeah, so now, and all the leadership you took in creating all these different programs is amazing. Tell me now about your transition to city administration, because that's an interesting story.
Yeah, I think this is something that's widely known in city government, but while Dixon's home to, you know, President Ronald Reagan, his boyhood home, and while we're where Walgreens began and John Deere, we're also home to the largest municipal embezzlement in the history of the country. Rita Crunwell was arrested by the FBI. She stole $54 million from the city of Dixon over a period of 20 years. Here I am 4 years into, you know, my time as police chief. And there were a lot of struggles but everybody was struggling at the time. You're still coming out of the recession of 2008. And Andrea Dobransky, the special agent in charge from the FBI, who I was good friends with, came to see me. And I thought, oh, cool. She came to see me. And she broke this news on me that they're raiding City Hall and this is what's going on. So in short, and I'll let you ask whatever questions you want, but in short, following her arrest and the fallout and the anger and the elected officials, as amazing as they were, like, what do we do? And then the fallout within our team and the loss of trust there, and this feeling of like shame to even like walk into McDonald's or anywhere. Like, it's like, hold on a
Sure.
second, like that, I didn't do anything. And so they tapped me on the shoulder, asked me to help lead us back. I became essentially the interim city administrator. We looked to professionalize every aspect of our city government, rebuild our finance system, looked at forms of government, and through that time, transitioned to the city manager form of government through an election. 75% of people said yes.
Wow, that's
And
interesting.
yeah, and because of that, and we hired essentially an interim city administrator, and then a new council was elected. And I was so excited to go back to the police department. I had
Oh,
a lot
okay.
of work left there to do, so we got about a year and a half in, we got the essentially interim city administrator hired. It was before the form of government change, and then I went back to policing. So that was kind of like my first taste and exposure to city management.
How long was that period that you were interim?
About a year and a half.
Oh, okay. So you got some good experience underneath you.
I did, I knew nothing about running a city government. I knew nothing about public works. But the skills that we learn as in policing and leadership and as the police chief, when you look at the big buckets, they're the same. Like, you're
Mhm.
overseeing and managing different things, but the skill set transitions. And
Yeah.
then for me, I'm a type of person, like, I recognize that I was the least experienced city administrator in the country. And so I reached out to John Phillips, who is a phenomenal, phenomenal human being, really helped us. And I began to figure out, like, okay, who are some of the more respected people? And then reaching out and forming those relationships. And I visited several different communities and examined different form of government. And I was a liaison to that task force. And so
Mhm.
it was really just about surrounding yourself with incredible people. And then that passion for Dixon and getting us turned around and forming the right team is what helped pull us to the other side of that. And, we
Right.
recovered $40 million, changed form of governments, professionalized every aspect. And it's a big part of what's made us who we are today.
Wow. Yeah, there was, I remember that story. I think that shocked the local world. Anyone around there, just how does this happen? So you did your interim and then went back to policing. Then there was a manager in place. And so how did you become?
It wasn't something I really wanted to. I didn't really have interest in being the city manager of Dixon. It's something they talked to me about coming out the other side of the
Mhm.
criminal situation. I just ran to became vice president of the Illinois Chiefs, was looking at the international Chiefs. But, individuals, organizations, and communities rise and fall with leadership. And it's about getting the right leaders in the right place. And, quite frankly, we got to a point where most of our department heads and including me were looking to go somewhere else.
Mhm.
There was a lot of red tape, micromanagement. There were some issues within the council at the time. There were some issues with commitment of the manager that they'd selected and the leadership style there. And so it just comes back to, my leadership excellence law number 12, which is why I stepped in at the time during the Rita thing, is when all else fails, lead. And so I love Dixon. I bleed purple. I was frustrated. We got this 88 corridor and nothing's happening. We haven't done any roads for a few years. We've got this
Mhm.
riverfront expansion. There's no relationship between the city and the park district and the county, right? And some of these strategic partners. And it's like, it doesn't have to be this way. And so
Yeah.
one of the department heads came and said, hey, when you were the administrator before, things went really well. Why don't you consider doing this? Some council members came, some other department heads. And I said, well, it's time to hang up the uniform, take off the badge, and make the transition. And I'm not a person that looks back a lot, but what we've accomplished now, I'm really proud of that, and the team we've created. And it's just incredible to be part of. So it's so rewarding. I think the biggest impact that we can ever make is locally, and that's what
Mhm.
makes being a city manager and being in city management uh so incredible, because the impact we shape and create the future of our communities.
Yeah, I like to say that it's daily lives, and a lot of citizens don't think of it. It's kind of this, the magic garbage collection. How did that happen? Or who made that decision? Why are we with this one? There's a lot of things going on in the background, but you impact daily lives, you improve quality of life. So, and these are services that people really do often take for granted. Tell us a little bit about being an administrator in Dixon. What's going on? Like, what are you leading now?
Oh
I'm sure
man.
you're leading a bunch of things.
Oh man. So, we end up, when I talk about the right people being in the right positions, within the first couple years, you saw a change at the leadership level of our park district.
Mhm.
With start with yes, we don't care who gets the credit, lots of humility, but vision and love for Dixon. There's some leadership changes at what we call Discover Dixon. We created a joint, we combined the Chamber of Main Street, or the Chamber of Commerce and Main Street. And then we
Oh,
put our tourism there, and they run a lot of our community events, a lot of things related to quality of life. We've established relationships. Our county board chairman is absolutely phenomenal. Now the county board administrator that they'd hired a few years ago, and even the transition of the new one,
mhm.
got great relationship with the school district, right? We created all these strategic partnerships. And in the last few years, we've won over $30 million in grants. We're in the middle of a riverfront expansion. We're adding 3 miles of new pedestrian pathway, including a bridge. We
That
blew up
sounds
that
great.
88 corridor. We annexed 700 acres. We created 2 TIFs. We've got 2 hotels going up, a fueling station. Chipotle just opened. We're working on a couple other big things. We got it. Like, there's all this development, all these things that are happening. We've done 35% of our roads. We've resurfaced 35% of our roads in the last 6 years.
Mhm.
And we've just created this phenomenal team. And now it's like momentum, momentum, momentum. We're just filling our abandoned Shopco facility, because Shopco kind of, went under in that with
Yeah.
a local lumber company that just came across yesterday, and we finalized that. So there's all these incredible, incredible things that are happening in town. And it's just about creating great teams, eliminating some of that red tape. I mean, it all starts with vision, having the strategic
Yes.
partnerships. And for the
Mhm.
city manager, I think one of the most important things for us to realize is why we might be the essentially CEO of the government.
Yeah.
One of the most important things for us to do once we get our teams together is to get out of the way, right? Yeah, be leaders and lead when we need to lead, but also be good followers.
Mhm.
And when you get good people in place and you do that, and you have vision, we understand purpose, and we tie it with our impact, and we're good at creating these high energy, positive cultures. It's amazing what can happen, especially when
Yes.
nobody cares who gets the credit.
Yeah, great things can happen. And I love how you made sure that there was connections, not only within the city itself, but also making sure that you had connections with the organizations around, because everyone does, the park district has their role, the library has their role, townships and all the other groups that serve. So obviously, like you said, making those connections as strong as they can be, great things happen. And I agree with you that you do kind of, as a leader, I lead my company, right? But I do find administrators, especially city and village managers, to be highly entrepreneurial. There's an entrepreneurial angle to it, because you do have to make sure that everybody is in the right place. Like you said, with your departments, you have everyone is just doing what they should be. And that's where the magic happens. Sounds like a lot's going on in Dixon. You're making me want to go visit Dixon. Does
You,
everybody
you,
out there
sh-
want to go
you
visit?
should absolutely come visit. Dixon is an amazing, like our downtown, we got 3 women's boutiques. We got an authentic Thai, authentic Italian restaurant, authentic Mexican restaurant. There's
Mhm.
our historic theater has come back to life. We won $1.5 million federal grant to do some work to that, and the
That's
leadership
nice.
there and the things that are happening. It's just incredible that this town of 16,000, I mean, rural communities are struggling to hang
Mhm.
on, right?
Yes.
And here we are just moving in this direction. And it comes down to vision, it comes down to leadership, it comes down to creating great teams. It comes down to, we've got an awesome elected officials. We've got a new mayor who's absolutely phenomenal, and we got 4 elected officials. So I'm fortunate there's only 5 elected officials.
Yeah.
We understand the importance of community engagement, telling our story between the
Yes.
police department, which we created, and I was a big part of when I was there, and now with the city. I mean, we're reaching a ton of people through our social media, and we
Good.
realize the importance of it's not enough to just do what we're doing. We've got to communicate and share it and get community engagement and community
Mhm.
feedback. And that's been a big part of our success as well. So it's just
Absolutely.
such a rewarding position to be able to
Yeah.
be in.
It's, I think it is very important to kind of bring your, residents, stakeholders, business owners, business, employees even along the journey with you. Like let them like peek under the hood of what's going on and make them feel a part of it, so they understand the value being provided by any municipality or
But
county.
And something simple, Melanie. We had all that snow recently, right?
Yeah.
And I decided to hop in. City Hall was closed. Everything was really closed down that day, and decided to hop in with our streets foreman, or not streets, our streets manager.
Mhm.
And he's a good guy, awesome leader, doing a phenomenal job. I'm like, hey, you mind if I shoot a little video? And so I just, with my cell phone, shot some video, showed this plow going between two cars that are parked on each side of the road and the different
Oh.
things, and asking them questions. And this thing just, I don't know, there's like 500 engagements, all these comments, all this love and support coming to the street department for the work
That's
they're doing.
great. I
But
love that.
those little things, they're impactful, you know, and
Mhm.
people got to understand, because we take for granted that they're out there on our days off, on the holidays. We don't understand.
Absolutely.
I was blown away. I knew it was a tough job, but how much strategy, how many decision making, the critical thinking it takes
Mhm.
to figure out what to do with all this snow, especially when you're getting 12 inches of it.
Absolutely. I always think of the poor ladies or gentlemen who are down in the sewer when they have or the water main breaks at like 2 a.m. It's like, well, everybody, yeah, they deserve like an award for
Amen.
leaving their family in the middle of the night. But anyway, so this is all awesome. Discover Dixon, everybody. There's lots going on under the exemplary leadership of Mr. Danny Langloss. So thank you for joining us today on Local Gov Stories, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much, Melanie. I appreciate you having me.
Melanie, that was a fantastic interview with Danny. First of all, thank you, Danny, for being on the podcast today. And Melanie, fantastic. Loved every bit of it. I love the story of going from a police chief to an administrator, and also hearing more about, as you can't bring up Dixon without what had happened with the embezzlement that happened there. And I want to remind everybody, I personally, a couple of years ago in a class I was in, we were talking about ethics, and they had us watch All the Queen's Horses, which is a documentary. It's a free documentary on YouTube. If you look it up, it's about 70 minutes long. Very much worth it if you want to find out more about what happened to Dixon.
Yeah, Danny is he's so high energy and so sharp and smart. And going through something like that, there's got to be so much that he learned just through that experience alone. I mean, that's like a media firestorm. When he was talking about walking into the coffee shop and being embarrassed, like it is really kind of a kink in the armor, isn't it? Just a city, unfortunately, allowing that to happen, or that happening within a city. So yeah, it was a really interesting interview. And again, thanks, Danny, for being with us.
And Dixon, very lucky to have Danny running the show there.
Yeah,
So
lots going on in Dixon, as we said. Lots going on in that town.
yes.
So,
and speaking of a town with a lot going on, Tinley Park, their music venue down there is funny. Talking to Hannah Lipman, their assistant village manager, she could tell the age of somebody by how they refer to the World Music Theater, as I do. The
I do too, which means that we're of a certain age.
Yeah.
Well.
So I had a chance to talk to Hannah recently, and it was a phenomenal conversation. And I walked away from our conversation just energized about local government in general, and the fact someone like her works in local government. Her enthusiasm is very contagious. And I'd like to share that interview now with you. I want to thank again Hannah Lipman, the Assistant City Manager for Tinley Park, for joining us. So part of our mission with the ILCMA Local Gov Stories podcast is to tell local government stories of how people entered the profession, whether it was coming from the private sector or maybe they're multi-generational local government workers. So today, our first showcase is Hannah Lipman. She's the Assistant Village Administrator for the Village of Tinley Park down in the South Suburbs. Hannah, first of all, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Jim. I'm happy to be here.
And I'm excited to hear about your local gov story. So Hannah has a cool story. You come from a family of municipal employees. Your dad was a Chicago cop, so you grew up in the city of Chicago. You have a brother that was a Chicago cop, and you have another brother that is currently a finance director in Park Ridge, right?
Correct, yes.
That's exciting. You were destined to go into this profession. So Hannah went to college at Elmhurst College, got her MPA or MPPA from Northwestern. So I'll let you kind of take over from here. Tell me about what interested you to go into local government, and from, from leaving high school into college, is that something you knew you wanted to do?
Yeah, and you already kind of mentioned it a bit, but I just remember growing up. My dad was a Chicago police lieutenant, and so he was always working, and he would come back home, and there would be times when the adults were at the table talking about issues, and I just remember always kind of listening in and being like, well, why can't you just do this, and you could fix it this way, and hearing those kinds of conversations. So I think always being exposed to that at some level definitely had an impact. I always say I owe my credit to public service to my dad. He definitely instilled that value in me. So I went to college, and at Elmhurst, I studied political science and urban studies. And I knew that that's where my interests lie, but I didn't necessarily want to be a lawyer. So I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with that major. So I was fortunate that I had a really good advisor who, kind of helped work with me and push me, and actually had a class on public administration in undergrad. So I started looking at internships actually my junior year going into senior year summer. And I was just looking, at different internships at alderman offices and different things like that, growing up in Chicago. And actually, a family friend had mentioned that, Tinley always has summer interns, and I applied there and was fortunate to get an internship there and kind of get my foot in the door and have my first exposure to working in the public sector. And I've been in Tinley ever since.
That's outstanding. So tell me, growing up, you had this vision of what working in local government was like, and obviously it was attracted enough to draw you that way. And then you got your first internship, and now you're the assistant administrator. You worked, how cool, you worked from the intern all the way up through the ranks to become the assistant administrator. Is the outlook, do you still look at local government the same?
That's a good question. I mean, especially growing up in the city too, you don't realize that things operate a lot differently in the suburbs. I'm a city girl through and through, so I always kind of joke that it's funny I ended up working in the suburbs, but I love it. No, I definitely have been exposed and learned just how hands-on and how important professional government is, and the impact that you have in local government. And it's interesting because, there's things that you would never think that you would be involved in or know or come to understand. And you don't have to be the expert and know everything about everything, when you start out, but over time you grow and you learn and you get involved in more, and you learn about things that you never thought you'd work on. And those are some of the best projects and most exciting things to be a part of.
So, and it kind of ties into my next question, and especially if you were sitting in front of a room full of high school students, or maybe mid-career people looking for a change, and you could sell working in local government, what is it about our profession that you love? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
There's a lot of different things, but one thing I always like to tell is a story from when I was an intern, and it's nothing exciting, but it was something that that made me say, that's cool. I can see myself doing this. So when I was interning over the summer, there was a resident complaint, and there was an individual who had a disability and was in a scooter, and he lived down the block from where an old Kmart used to be. But there was these utility poles that were in the way, blocking the sidewalk for easy access for him to get into the parking lot for the area without having to go all the way around onto Harlem, a major thoroughfare. And so everyone decided to throw that at the intern. And so they were like, Hannah, just figure this one out, right? And so getting in contact with the building manager, and no response, back and forth all summer long. And I left for this after the summer. I left for my final semester in undergrad. I finished a semester early and came back right away in the winter to keep working. And when I got back, one of the emails in my inbox was from the resident, and it was just him saying, thank you. Those utility poles are gone, and now I can get from my house to the store much easier and much quicker. And it's a small example. It's nothing exciting, but you see your impact and you see the things come to life in the projects you're working on. Right now we have a major development project in our downtown that's close to $100 million between a public-private partnership, a community plaza gathering place with some mixed-use development, new townhomes, and a couple buildings that the village is taking on. And, I may not be there forever, but a project of that scale is going to be there, and it's going to be a gathering place and a key driver for the community for decades to come. So it's seeing that you have an impact, and you're helping grow a community and do good things. and working with the people. At the end of the day, it's just, trying to leave things a little bit better than you found it. And at the local level, you get to have that impact, both in the short term and the long term.
That outlook is phenomenal. Tinley Park residents are lucky to have you on board, and I can see how it's almost 8 years you've been with the village, right? So over the span of 8 years, you've gone from the ranks of being an intern, a city transplant, out to the suburbs, to now you're the assistant administrator. I did have a question. So I'm the assistant administrator all the way up in Antioch, basically the other side of the country.
End of the world.
Yeah. People with our role, or people that are in similar positions in local government, tend to have a variety of different things that they do. And honestly, for each community, the assistant role really can look a lot different. What does it look like in Tinley Park as far as your responsibilities and that sort of thing? What falls under the assistant administrator role?
Yeah, it's a good question. It can be a lot of different things. So the way I always explain it, my manager, he oversees more of the external departments. So our police, our fire, public works, and I tend to handle more of the internal departments. So we have an in-house marketing department, human resources, finance, things like that. But the day-to-day, I interact on a weekly basis with all the departments and the different, challenges or needs that they have. It can be working with residents, it can be working with businesses, different developers. We have a lot of development that goes on. So we operate at a high level, kind of as an administrative team on new development. It can be working with our unions. It really just depends on the day. Lots of meetings, but lots of fun projects. Definitely project-based. We have a lot of big things happening right now. So I end up kind of taking the lead on a lot of different projects and working with the teams. And the other cool thing about local government is that you have the ability to get your hands on a lot and being involved in a lot of different areas. So right now, for example, I'm our interim finance director, and I don't have a CPA. Finance is, I didn't go to college for finance, anything like that. But over the years, being involved in all of our budget processes and in the roles that I've had, I've come to know a lot about how our finances work and, our budget process. And I've actually put our budget together and, from start to finish. We're in budget season right now. So rolling out the budget, the new fiscal year, and working with the departments, departmental meetings, to piecing together the 456-page document of a $220 million budget. So, you don't have to be an expert in an area, but as soon as you kind of come to understand, there's room for you to kind of take lead and get involved in a lot of different things.
Well, one of the things I think is important for success in what we do is passion, and you obviously have that. I'm exhausted just listening to everything that you're responsible for right now. You've got a lot going on in Tinley. Tinley Park, just over the years, has grown, so it's exciting that you get to be a part of continued growth within the community. So that being said, with everything that's on your plate right now, and you seem to adapt to different variables or change well, what keeps you going? Is there something you turn to for inspiration? And along with that, is there any books that you could recommend? Anything you're reading, music, something like that?
No, it's a good question. To be honest, things have been very busy lately, so I haven't been reading a lot. But no, I think one of the things that keeps me going and looking back over the 8 years, if you would have told me when I was an intern that I would be here 8 years later as the assistant village manager, at that point in time, I would have been like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? Because it is common for people in local government to do a couple of years, especially as you're growing and, moving from town to town until you kind of land in a role that you're in for some period of time. But I think from the very beginning, I was fortunate to have been involved in a lot and build good relationships with the key staff. And I feel that I've been able to be a change agent and, in an important time. And, a lot of our organizations, there's a lot of people who've been dedicated for a long time. There's a lot of people, though, that are nearing retirement age. And so a lot of the things that we do in our organizations have always kind of been done that way. And not to say that those things are wrong, but I think I've been able to work and take a different look at things and make changes and try to improve processes and evaluate positions and try to support employees to make positive change. And even if it's just in small ways, But being able to do that over time, day to day, those changes, tend to go unnoticed. But when you look back and look at that, it is something to be proud of. And it can be very exhausting and frustrating sometimes because as governments, we're slow to change. But when you can take a step back and reflect, it means a lot, and it does help keep you going.
Well, our guest this time around on Local Gov Stories, the ILCMA podcast, Hannah Lipman, Assistant Village Manager for the Village of Tinley Park. Hannah, thank you for joining us today. It was wonderful to hear about your just your path to where you are today. It's very exciting and honestly motivational. So hopefully, and I guess we can leave it with anybody either looking to come into the profession that's either in school right now, or I'm one of those mid-career people that came in late to the game. What do you say to somebody that's kind of on the fence of whether or not this is the right profession?
I always say do it. There's even my friends, I'm like, so many people would be so great in local government. They just don't really know about it. But yeah, get involved. I mean, IAMA and ILCMA are both great organizations to help build the network and also offer professional development opportunities. So that's one thing I owe a lot of my successes to, is being able to work great with those other individuals in the field and building those networks. And honestly, just get involved. I mean, get your hands on it, get an internship, get a management analyst job if you're early career, just check it out and try it. Because I think once people try it, that there's not really anyone that I've heard that looks back and regrets it. So just get involved, get your hands on as much as you can, and go for it.
Excellent. Hannah, thank you so much.
Well, that interview was awesome. You guys have a lot of energy together. And, you asked really, really good questions. It's interesting to see how Hannah came in. And, for those who are listening, who maybe don't have family members in law enforcement or know about municipal employment or municipal careers, careers in local government can translate from any place. There is HR, there is finance, certainly there's fire and police, public works, administration, and others, depending on the municipality. But if you're out there watching and you're a younger person and you're thinking about what you want to do with your life, look into local government. Go to ilcma.org/localgovcareers, and that will help to explain a little bit more about the opportunities available. And just to kind of reiterate, what this podcast is, Jim and I are working really hard to make sure that we're profiling the profession in many ways. So basically, we want to preview enrichment opportunities like the 4 events we mentioned: IAMA, ILCMA, the Metro Luncheon, help to tell the stories of how people got in, like Hannah and like Danny. Also other things like showcasing a day in the life, actually. And we have interviews lined up soon. We're scheduling those now about kind of profiling the different careers and what they do on a daily basis. What does an administrator do? What does a public works director do? Jim, we talk about diversity, right?
That's right. And one of the cool things about covering the entire state of Illinois is there is just the village administrator role, like you had mentioned, is different from town to town and from county to county and regionally. What an administrator does in the northern part of the state or in the Chicagoland suburbs is much different than downstate or central Illinois. And it's cool to share the experiences that we have across the state and how things are done differently, because sometimes there could be some good ideas that you learn, like, oh, that's an interesting way to do that. So that's one of the things that we hope to do is act as an idea exchange.
Absolutely. Actually, we're working right now with a couple of towns. They're very, very small. Piatone and Marseilles, you walk into City Hall or Village Hall, and it's just this teeny little place, and then up in the northern part of the state, it's much more robust. The budgets are much larger, the populations are larger. So in those smaller towns, everyone is really carrying quite a bit. A manager is doing things that sometimes maybe a manager necessarily wouldn't do up in the northern part of the state. So it's interesting to see the total differences, like you say. And then also too, one of the main emphases is making sure that young people know that there is opportunity for their future in local government. Kind of like Hannah, she had a kind of a way in through family, but like I mentioned, just kind of opening up their minds to a career in service to communities where you can make a local impact.
Well, and that's something you hear a lot about, like, oh, people aren't going into government like they used to. but there are still some great people going into government, first of all. And I can't underscore the commitment to serving a community, that commitment and the feeling of serving that you get from working in local government. Nothing comes close to that. And I
Yeah.
hope, one of the things I was thinking of is, I hope this is a good reminder to somebody listening out there to maybe put together an internship program for the summer. Internship programs are, honestly, they're really difficult sometimes, trying to juggle everything. And then you've got interns that come to you every day trying to figure out what they're doing or what to
Asking
do.
questions. Yes, yes, yes.
And it could be a lot of work, especially up front, but it's worth it. And Hannah Lipman is a great example. I had an internship in college. I know a lot of people did, or summer work programs through Public Works. How many of us drove a truck and filled potholes during the summer in college? These are important programs to start the pipeline of people coming into our profession.
Absolutely. So that is one of our big goals, is to make sure that more people become aware of these careers, which are very dynamic, exciting, and ever changing, because when you're dealing with people, you never know what's going to happen.
Well, Melanie, this was an awesome episode. We've
Was.
got 3 in the books now. I can't wait to hear what our 4th one will sound like, but I want to thank everybody for their support from ILCMA and everybody listening. And you, this is really fun working together, and
It is.
thanks for everything. This was a great episode. So thank you, Melanie.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And we'll see you, or you listen to us next time.